The Table, Chapter 4, Central State. The ambulance ride. I remember being processed, tired, and confused. I was sitting on the Group W bench, analyzed and scrutinized. See, the place I was being transported to is called the Loony Bin. I didn't really think I was that crazy, but hell, the ward really was the W ward. The ward where the new folks are categorized. You get a colored bracelet that allows you certain privileges. There was an older fella there named Charlie. He played with himself, and then the nurses came and took away his wheelchair. Then he was scolded, and then he played with himself again. They would take away his walker. Then he eventually ended up sitting in a chair, playing with himself. I was on a 3-day mental inquest warrant, self-imposed. Thanksgiving Day, the day I arrived, was a holiday. That didn't count. I was going to be there 4 days. My mother visited on the second day and brought me a carton of Camel Straights. I kept those in my personal drawer under my bed. I wanted to leave the second I got there. I didn't see myself as that. I wasn't like those people walking around with the blank stares. I remember the initial interview with the doctor. I was nervous, and I was pretty sure the doctor was naked from the waist down. She was a beautiful woman, and that made things worse. I was positive she was thinking for me. Paranoid, sure. I was paranoid and lost, exhausted, and ready to sign myself out. One problem, I was property of the state. They could hold me until the warrant was up. I didn't think I was better than this. It wasn't like that. There was this one lady. Well, she was locked up down the hall from me singing Jesus songs all night. The guards came, and after a scuffle, she was taken to an isolation room on the ward. All night she sang in a loud voice, "Jesus loves me, yes I know." I couldn't sleep. I couldn't chain smoke either. Lights out, 10 p.m. In the morning, I got some Central State Loony Bin coffee. Here's the recipe. Stand in line for coffee. 1 styrofoam cup. 1/2 a cup of coffee. Add lots of sugar. Lots. Add tons of whatever that creamer stuff is. Drink as many cups as possible while waiting for the door to the outside smoking area to open. Then go outside and smoke 3 cigarettes back to back. Hot box them. The funny part is, right after doing that, that's when the nurse comes and takes your vitals. I am sure we all had high blood pressure as the white sugar pumped through our nicotine-soaked blood. Great time to check our mental capacity and bodily functions. The morning routine, ritual, was to wait for whatever was going to happen next and wander around the ward looking for something to do. I wanted to leave. I knew this was not what I thought it was going to be. My mother couldn't get me out of this one. She wasn't going to get me out of this one. I was now part of the mental health circle of treatment in the system. Soon would come the drugs. I remember in the community TV room and folks watching it, I remember thinking that I would put together a puzzle that I found in a pile of board games. I got the box, poured all the pieces out, and was immediately overwhelmed. I knew by looking at the pieces that there were way too many pieces missing. The metaphor was there, but no puzzle. I remember the only way one could attain anything close to freedom was to advance the color of your bracelet with good behavior. I was more interested in being able to get the hell out of that place. My mind was wandering like the wild geese in the west. I was gone. Over and over the same thought would mix, blend with the last thought. I would think about going home, going anywhere other than being watched all day. The woman with the cigarette burns, the man jacking off, the orderlies and nurses. I was locked up. Free will had ended. My room, my bed, my journals, and smokes. It's all I had. I had plenty of toxic, dreamy thoughts rolling around in my head. I was pissed at my mom. She wouldn't allow me to come home. I ain't got no home now. Waiting for the doors to the outside smoking area to open. Thoughts burning in my mind. Time to leave. Time. I refused treatment after the 4th day and was released to the care of 7 County Services Incorporated and ended up in assisted housing. The house was in Old Louisville, the neighborhood I knew so well. Thank God. The drugs were starting to take effect. Halidol, Coagentin were the first drugs. I was diagnosed paranoid, schizophrenic, and bipolar. Officially diagnosed. Later, that would be changed to just bipolar. I was assigned a room and a bed. Over the course of 4 months, I had few roommates. I don't remember much about who they were. I do remember that this housing deal was going to be temporary. I was weighing in at 145 pounds. Several months before, I was at 250 pounds. My image in the mirror was haunting, but I felt great. Hunger was setting in, and soon I would be back on the eating train. That's about all there was to do at the house anyway. Eat and sit in the community pool room and listen to the old floor console stereo that was playing all the hits all day while we waited to eat. I talked to many of the folks who were living and passing through the house. I talked to the woman who was beaten by her husband. She was an alcoholic. Her earlobes cut in two in a fight. She told me that a bitch had pulled out her earrings. She was the ringleader of our house walks to McDonald's. Every day a group of us from the house went to get some Mickey D's. She was from somewhere in Kentucky, redneck as hell, naughty and angry, strange and humanly normal on most fronts, backwoods, uneducated and American, harmless. Every day was a routine. Housework and chores were assigned. I took out the garbage, cooked, cleaned, and more. Then there was Cedric. He was in shock treatment and watched TV all day. At least he sat looking in that direction. If the TV was off, he would still be watching TV. When the folks at the house called for dinner, he got up and did his chores. I never heard him speak a word the entire time I stayed there. Cedric was an African-American man. He was always dressed in the finest clothes. The clothes were sent to him by his family. He wore U of L sports colors, U of L shirts, and red and white sneakers. He was a fan, or at least that is what his family wanted him to be. I once got stuck in the bathroom. I freaked out. The drugs were really starting to take hold. My head was spinning and hot. My heart was racing. Oh shit. Feel the pulse. As I lift the skin slightly on my wrist, the door won't open. I cracked. Oh shit, I'm stuck in here. What the hell is happening to me? These drugs, I don't know. How the hell does this door open? I can hear the folks outside talking the radio. That stupid fucking song, Informer, lickety boom boom down, all over and all day and night, and this place is crazy. My head is rushing and my heart is pounding. Feel the pulse. Feel the pulse. I can't get this fucking door open. Help! Help! A slight twist and the door opens. What the fuck? That panic attack happened. Cedric, the ever-changing roommates, they all happen. Many lonesome conversations and sleepless nights happen. And then I moved into a Section 8 apartment above a crack house. I own 2 chairs and a bar stool and my stepfather made when I was younger. My angel Donna brought me a mattress from the DAV for me to sleep on. Still have my stereo. I had a really cheap black and white TV, the only TV I ever possessed. The government checks were issued to 7 counties. I had nothing. I had a porch balcony, had a place to sit. Depression was setting in. Depression. Like a long trip up shit creek without a paddle. 7th and Ormsby. Shit. Camera pans to the ceiling fan. Period. Exclamation point. Deep, dark depression. I was lost. In the neighborhood I knew so well, walking every day to 7 counties and eating cheeseburgers at the lunch counter drugstore on my way to my meeting with Gordon and 7 county staff and patients, I was starting over. My stereo was stolen. The next door neighbors vacated and left their entire apartment a wreck and probably took my stereo with them. The door was smashed open and I could see piles of clothes and garbage thrown all about the apartment. People were coming in and out downstairs all the time. Loud gangster rap music blasting all night. My angel was coming over all the time, and I really didn't want to complain, and I really didn't want the company. My angel Donna wouldn't leave me alone. I wanted to be depressed, or I wanted to be left alone and to be on the lithium that was now keeping me at a level that was basically like a flat line. I didn't care about anything. I wasn't happy about anything. I sat for hours and watched traffic go by at 7th and Orangemead, a.k.a. the end of Old Louisville. The next block over was the industrial part of town. I was on the edge. Now remember, once there was a time when the TV would sign off. After the news and Hawaii Five-0, the national anthem played. I would eat an entire delivery pizza, fall asleep, and repeat. Wake up, watch traffic go by from my second story balcony, walk to the neighborhood lunch counter and get a cheeseburger and fries from the old ladies who worked at that place where time had stopped somewhere in the 1950s. Walk to my counseling sessions and get my $70 check. Depression. Shit. My angel, Donna, no matter what I said, she wouldn't go away. The drugs had made my pecker not peck. I didn't feel like making love. I didn't feel like talking. Why she hung around? Well, we are married now some 21 years later, and she and my son are upstairs from me right now. She knew I was her man, or at least that's how she explains it. C'est la vie. Amen, and women too. Lithium is a salt. That's all they knew. They didn't really know how it worked, and it worked on me, meaning I wasn't manic anymore, but a gray darkness fell. I was defeated. Donna, my angel, eventually left for other travels. I spent hours and many lonely nights pining for her return, confused, alone. So alone that talking to myself didn't work. I was selfless, thoughtless. I really didn't give a fuck. No politics, no activism. More importantly, no music, no songs in my head. I was lithiuminated. The main point of this time is that my mother had cut me completely off. For a long while, I was pissed about that. Thinking back on it now, I know why she did that. She knew, from the advice of many folks and possibly my counselor, that I had to get myself out of this by myself. The feller who owned the Twice Told bookstore, the feller who us crazy folks were drawn to, he and my mother were very close friends. She talked with him many times about my situation. She talked to many folks about it and had come to a very heartfelt hypothesis. She made an educated guess. She suspected that I would be fine. She was once an immigrant's kid, once hooked on speed and downers, divorced twice and then came out as a lesbian. I'm sure she knew her fair share of insanity. I guess she knew that her red diaper baby boy was going to get through this chapter okay. Her decision to let me hit rock bottom must have broken her heart and gone against all of her mothering instincts. We later talked about this, but she never really told me why she did it. Magicians never tell, I suspect. The woman at 7 counties, my counselor with the last name Fortune, was also an angel. She saved my life. She allowed me to rebuild my confidence. The government money and state mental health system was a help to me. The bookstore feller, he saved my life. To be very humble, Harold and Mrs. Fortune saved my life. Harold always gave me time. The time of day. He allowed me to come into his bookstore and find that haven that I needed from the streets, from reality. Harold allowed many of us wild men and women of the creative world to seek refuge from many a life storm in the confines of his bookstore. He would sometimes seem to be there, not there, eyes closed, laid back in his chair, Buddha statue and Jack Kerouac poster and all, jazz records and Kentucky authors section, piles of books on every step leading up to his apartment, his tough love, harsh loving critical presence, his wild laugh, his little dance when something was just perfect. Mrs. Fortune was talking to my mother. I am most certain that was going on. I had a running narrative going on in my head that included thoughts of serious self-critique. I was talking to myself, telling myself that I was stupid. I was a high school dropout. She convinced me to get my GED, a general education on decency. I had sessions with Mrs. Fortune on Thursdays and Tuesdays. Eventually, I got a job, decided to quit the medicine. I didn't drink, and I was not doing drugs, except the prescriptions that were given to me by the doctor. When I quit the medicine, I did it with the advice and watchful eye of the doctor. I wanted off the lithium. I needed a change. Living by myself, up in my head all the time, was part of the problem. I needed family. Being alone, I was in desperate need of being around like-minded individuals. Well, that is what we all need. Another angel would help me out of this hole of existence. My friend Blue Murphy and I got an apartment. He knew I was coming off the medicine. He also knew I was serious about asking him to watch over me. Don't let me lay around all day. Blue and I, we're brothers. I needed somebody to lift me, stand by me, all that mushy stuff. He did that. Our apartment was below a poet friend of my mother's. I spent several months bouncing ideas and dreams off his spirit. The poet upstairs I'm speaking about, Umar. I was his shams and he was my roomie. Or vice versa. Umar, the last poet of Louisville, street poet, artful activist. He was the man who convinced me to perform on stage for the first time. I played Bob Marley's Redemption songs at a place called the Rudyard Kipling Bar. I think I was 15 years old at the time. The Rudyard Kipling was the bar all the poets, activists, writers, and musicians flocked to. Old Louisville was the breeding ground for a diverse creativity. Fourth and Oak in Old Louisville was gay, straight, homeless, dirty, and rich. Regular people lived there too. The Rud, as it was called, was a safe haven in a neighborhood on the edges of downtown Louisville, Kentucky, the land of thy birth. I spent many a nights closing down the Rud, playing African hand drums in a band called Serpent Wisdom. I spent many a night talking with Jackson Renfro, the shamanistic, basketball-loving seeker poet frontman, sitting on the back wall outside till the wee morning hours, talking about everything. The Rudyard Kipling was a college, a community center. It was a place like that school that I fantasized Jalaluddin Rumi organized, a cultural center. I was a student. That wall, those long performances, plays, the working people, starving artists, the whirling ideas and dangers, the long-winded, passionate, ecstatic conversations. Pre-rant for the literary renaissance, Umar and the artful activist poet Blue, the poet, flute, mathematical musician, and worker, big-haired ex-Marine reservist Blue would partner with another angel, Jen Fuller, to form a literary magazine, the Louisville Arts Review. I was published for the first time. They had a party of an opening. All the wild birds of Louisville would be there. I digress often. This angel of a sorts would fly around in circles, eventually hooking up with the writer of the foreword of this book. This angel, Jen, would, many years in the future, be at my mother's bedside when she passed from cancer. To be elusive, this angel was a student of my mother's or vice versa. I was always nervous around this woman. She is a powerful poet, firebrand of a gentle soul. To me, somewhat of a long-lost sister. I am mentioning her in this book to make a serious point. My mother was a good witch. People called her that. Witch comes embedded with the name Glenda, like the title Pope comes with the name John Paul. My mental illness, my burning, I know is a workplace hazard of the creative. Voila! Voila! That's it. Mental illness is a workplace hazard. I have many people to thank, some who were working in ways that I will never know or understand. Our artist community? Well, that's what saved me. That is the point. I came from a time when we were all doing magnificent work. Times change. We share inspiration, collectively, unknowing. The foreword writer and editor of this book, Ron Whitehead, would eventually stand up on the hood of a rental truck and make a speech to 150 people and say, "We are going further, onward to eat the beats." And I followed. What has always been in the background of how I got here from there has been many spooky connections between people. The one-liners that I remember from conversations. my mentors, teachers, and angels. It might have been just a passing sentence, a quilt of conversational DNA, a mental curry powder, garam masala, mandala elixir. That is the Silk Road narrative of who I am, what I've heard. That is the point. We, hipsterly speaking, right?